Let's talk about the killing of Jordan Neely. So I took some time to process this case because I didn't want to just jump to a conclusion. I wanted to speak on it at the very end. And the reason I'm choosing to talk about this case, there's people that are close to me that I respect. Old football coaches of mine, ex-military guys who I basically have a lot of love for, a lot of respect for, and one guy in particular, basically saluted Mr. Penny, for doing society a favor, etc. And it's bothersome. And I'm going to tell you why. So first of all, I'm not anti citizens arrest. I'm actually pro citizens arrest. I'm someone who believes that people should get involved when things in their community get out of hand. Okay, I am one of those people that are for citizens arrest. I'm for citizens intervening and qualified people, okay, intervening in situations who are level-headed and know how to take action and take the appropriate action, right? Because I believe there's a time and a place, for intervention. So what I became concerned with in this case was the facts. And then also the trial of Jordan Neely, in my opinion, brought up a good conversation in terms of what is the point of intervention? Where is that point where someone has the legal right to intervene? Can it be done on the basis of words, or does it have to be after something has already happened? And this is very important because in the case of Jordan Neely, we see that Mr. Neely hadn't attacked anyone. And the thing that bothers me, what I don't like is when we start talking about the facts of the case and then people start talking about all these assumptive things. They'll say, in other words, people will say things like, well, he only didn't attack someone because Mr. Penny got involved. And my response is, and that's an assumption. That's just, again, we're talking facts. That's an assumption. You don't know for 100% fact that Mr. Penny would have harmed anyone if Mr. Neely would not have gotten involved. That's a fact. That's not what I feel. So I'm very weary of those types of responses because that is bias. Okay, that's fear. That's fear, and some fear is reasonable, but not all. And when you start talking about judgment and judging, I think you have to be careful about what you allow your feelings and your emotions and your fears to convince you is right or wrong. So what I cared about in this case was two things, really. I cared about what Mr. Neely said and what Mr. Neely did, because it was these two things that, for some reason, caused Mr. Penny to get involved physically, okay, with a rear naked choke. So what did Mr. Neely say? Okay, Mr. Neely said that he was prepared to die. The witnesses say that he got on the train with soiled clothes, belligerent, and that he said something like he was ready to die and he didn't care if people on the train died, something of that sort. Okay. And obviously these are, wild statements, right? But my specific question regarding that is who did he specifically say he was going to harm? Because saying that I don't care if you die is a lot different from saying that I'm going to kill you. Those are different statements. Those are not the same. Because if someone threatens to actually kill someone, right, then you have a different level of urgency, right? As opposed to someone saying, well, I don't care if something happens to you. That's different. That's implying that I don't care. Like, if something happens to you, it's on you. Like, whatever. If something happens to you, it happens to you. Okay. That's like basically wishing harm on someone. But to say that I'm going to do something to you is different. That's saying I'm about to do something to you. And the latter, the more aggressive verbal threat, I haven't seen any witness say was said by Mr. Neely. I've only heard witnesses say that he said he didn't care if the people on that train died. Okay. So that makes me believe that Mr. Neely was crazy. And when you look at his medical history, you can see that that is in fact the case. Like he obviously battled with some level of mental illness. Okay, so you have a young, homeless, 145-pound man talking crazy on the train. Okay, uncomfortable, yes. If I'm on the train with my family, am I uncomfortable? Am I reasonably uncomfortable? Yes. Am I afraid even? Maybe. Maybe I might have some level of fear, but does that fear with that statement alone, does that give me the right to basically assault this person? And I don't think the answer to that is yes. So then the other question becomes, what did he do? Okay. And these are the things I'm looking at the evidence. What did he say? We already established. What did he do? Nothing. I heard him say, someone said that he took his jacket off and threw it out and threw it on a seat next to a woman. So what else did he do that made you think, that made anyone think that he was about to act on that quote unquote threat? And the answer is nothing. Nothing. There is no physical. He didn't attack anyone. He didn't step to anyone. Nothing. Okay. So then Mr. Penny, it sounds like he basically walked up on Mr. Neely and put him in a chokehold. This is my issue. My issue. So first of all, I have a hard time even believing that anyone had the right to restrain Mr. Neely. I think that people, if you were uncomfortable, you could have just went to a different train. You could have went to a different car. You could have asked him to stop. But most people, when you see a crazy person acting crazy, you're not going to say anything to them. You're just going to avoid them. And anyone who lived or lives in a big city, like that's usually how you act. You usually just, when you see a crazy person, you just usually avoid them. You let them, like if they're not going to do anything, just, you know what, your life goes on. Like, I'm not going to waste my time dealing with you. You have some problem, whatever. Just go keep that over there. I'm going to avoid you. I have my family. Look, we're getting out of here. We don't have time to deal with this fool right now. Okay. We're not dealing with it. Okay. That's what most people are going to do. But Mr. Penny didn't do that. Mr. Penny instead decided that he was going to restrain him by means of a rear naked choke. And this is where I kind of draw the line. See, here's the question. Police officers have a constitutional obligation to uphold the law and protect public citizens, right? Police. We give them the authority to do things such as arrest people for the crimes that they have committed. These are the gold standard. This is the gold standard in terms of, or it's supposed to be the gold standard, the badge, okay, and what it represents. And the thing is that police don't even put criminals in rear naked chokes to restrain them. They don't. They're not trained to do that. They're not taught to do that. And the question is why? And the answer is very simple, because you're restricting a person's air is likely to kill them. The risk of killing that person is so high that it's not a reasonable way to restrain someone for the purposes of arresting them. Because the nature of a rear naked choke is life threatening. A rear naked choke is not designed to restrain a person. It's not a reasonable way to simply restrain. If the objective of this maneuver is to simply restrain until law enforcement can come, then a rear naked choke is not an appropriate response. Because a rear naked choke by nature is restricting air to the brain, which will kill a person. So it is more of a life-threatening maneuver. It's a way to kill someone. We see this. We're not going to play ignorant to this. This is a rear naked choke can kill if held for too long. And that's what happened with Mr. Neely. So all these people stood by and simply allowed Mr. Penny to choke Mr. Neely to the point of unconsciousness, or to the point of having some type of episode that ultimately led to his death. So this is my problem, is that I consider a rear naked choke to be an unlawful use of force, an unreasonable use of force, granted the circumstances. Now, if Mr. Neely was actively attacking someone, and the person that he was attacking, he was at risk of doing GBI, great bodily injury, then that level of force meets the expectation, because you're putting someone in a hold or in a position that could kill them, but they've already demonstrated actions that were risking the life of another. So your actions to intervene, which may include killing that person, would then be reasonable because you're protecting the life of another person whose life itself is in demonstrable danger. Okay? That wasn't the case here. That simply was not the case here. And it's very basic. This is not like second semester calculus. This is not, law school. This is not computer science. This is basic common sense. And I think the reason the lines get so blurry and why people have such a hard time with this case, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I think that the race of the people is a big part of the reason why it's so difficult for a lot of people to really look at this case and come to the right conclusion. They look at one side, they see a white veteran, combat veteran, and they look at the other side and they see a mentally ill young black man who's been arrested 40 something times and all of that. And they cannot, even with the facts of the case, they still cannot come to the right conclusion because they themselves have bias. They themselves are having a difficult time because of the person's race. And I think that that's really what this is. And I think if the roles were reversed and the vigilante, the veteran who killed let's say, for example, a young, black military veteran choked a young white homeless person to death, I think that the response would be very different. But salutes to the officers. I think that they got it right when they arrested Mr. Penny because of the crime. I think that the jury, which we call a jury of our peers, did a terrible job. I think that they struggled with the emotion of the case and could not separate the facts from their feelings. I really believe that's what it was. And it's sad. Again, I want to make something very clear before I get out of here, that I don't believe that Mr. Neely was innocent. I do believe that Mr. Neely, his actions were not becoming, right, of a civilized society. But the barbaric response of Mr. Penny was also not acceptable in a civil society. And I deem both of them as guilty of crimes on that day. And, again, what should Mr. Neely have happened to him? He probably should have been kicked off of the train and never allowed to ride again. That's what I think they should do with people who have that type of mentality on the train, who are causing disturbances, doing different things. They probably could have arrested him for, public intoxication or whatever, some other violation of a civil code in society, or if you really want to get aggressive, arrest him for making terroristic threats or something like that, if you want to really try to push the envelope. But that's about all you got. You don't have him attacking someone. He's not riding with a knife. He don't have a gun. He's just on here. He's just sick. Maybe he needs to be in a hospital. Maybe he needs to be on medication. I don't know. But something needs to be done, right? I'm not saying Mr. Neely was an angel, obviously. That's what I'm trying to get across here. His behavior was unbecoming. But I do not believe that the response of Mr. 1 cent Penny was reasonable. I don't believe that his response, that the actions of Mr. That the actions of Mr. Penny were reasonable considering Mr. Neely's, crime. I don't think that was the right way of doing it. And on account of that, it's a homicide. And on account of that, I think he should have been held accountable for his crime. Because again, what he did was barbaric. And I wouldn't care if both individuals were white, if both people were black. I'm going to call a spade a spade. I'm judging the facts of this case, not feelings. Like, share, subscribe, fam. Comment below. Tell me what you think. Till we chat again, I'm out of here.